Hey guys, tonight we begin with a journey far back in time, thousands of years ago, when people didn't have electricity, didn't know what a spoon was, and thought fire was magic. Welcome to the Stone Age. It was a time when survival meant using whatever you could find, sleeping next to a smoky fire, and learning how not to get stepped on by animals twice your size. And tonight, you'll find out why lasting even one day here would be more complicated than you think. So before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I always love seeing who's joining this sleepy journey from all over the world. Now turn off the lights, turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background, and let's slip gently into tonight's adventure. You wake up in a small stone cave just as dawn breaks. The rocky floor is cold and your back aches a little, which is no surprise since you're lying on an animal hide padded with dry grass. No pillow, no blanket, just a fur coat and a pile of ashes from last night's fire, which you struggled to start for over an hour. You sit up, rub your eyes and sniff. No toothbrush, no warm water. And if you want to wash your face, you'll have to head outside to the stream, which also happens to be a favorite hangout spot for animals you'd rather not meet before breakfast. The fire's gone out. That's a problem. You need fire to stay warm, cook food, and keep the wild animals at bay. You pull out 2 rocks, sit down, and start striking them together. No fancy technique, just hitting them repeatedly and hoping for sparks. After 10 minutes, with sore hands and smudges of soot on your face, a tiny spark finally appears. You gently press a handful of dry grass toward it. Blow, then blow again, and a little flame is born. You breathe a sigh of relief. Time to find food. In the Stone Age, there was no ready-made breakfast. If you want to eat, you have to find it yourself. You grab a sharpened wooden spear, throw on an extra hide for warmth, and tiptoe out of the cave. It's foggy and freezing outside, the ground damp from the night before. Every step makes you alert. Not because you're hunting, but because you could easily become the hunted. You trek through a patch of low grass, scanning for signs of prey. No big footprints, but you do spot a few wild berry bushes. They're still a bit unripe, but edible. You gather some, tuck them into your pouch, and move on. A rabbit darts across the path. You throw your spear and miss. It vanishes. You mutter under your breath and keep walking. On the way back to your cave, you run into a group from your tribe. They've dragged back a small deer, a successful early morning hunt. You greet them, they nod, and one tosses you a lump of dried meat. You thank them and head back, feeling okay about surviving your first morning. Back at the cave, you feed the fire and roast some wild berries with chunks of forest yam. It's not fancy, but it fills your stomach. You sit by the fire, eating slowly, watching the flames dance and listening to the wind outside. The afternoon passes quietly. You use a stone to resharpen your spearhead, tidy up your sleeping area, hang more hides to block the wind, and check for leaks in the cave ceiling. No schedules, no deadlines, but no real rest either. If you don't do the work, no one will do it. Evening comes. The sun sinks quickly behind the distant hills. The temperature drops sharply. You pile on more wood. The wind howls through the cracks in the stone. In the dark, every sound seems louder. A small snap could be the wind, an animal or someone else. You curl up under your furs. The fire beside you glows red hot. You listen to the crackle of burning branches, the most comforting sound of the day. You stare out into the night. Nothing moves. But you know it's going to be cold, very cold. You don't think too far ahead. All that matters is tonight that the fire stays lit, that your sleeping spot stays dry, that there are still a few berries left in your pouch. You pull the fur up over your shoulder, close your eyes, and slowly drift to sleep, listening to the fire and the wind swirling outside the cave and thinking to yourself, I made it through day 1. Day Monday morning, the sky is still dim. Not because you woke up early, but because you couldn't fall asleep after hearing something outside the cave around midnight. Maybe an animal. Maybe the wind. Maybe your stomach is growling. You sit up. The fog outside hasn't lifted yet. The ground is cold and damp. You touch the stone floor, wet. It probably rained last night. A bit of the fire from yesterday still glows faintly, so you quickly toss in a few sticks of dry wood you prepared. The fire catches, not exciting but warm enough. You dig through your leather pouch from yesterday, checking what's left. A few wild berries and 2 chunks of dried root. Nothing fresh, not filling, but better than nothing. You eat while thinking today you'll need to find something more. Your stomach suggests. Maybe try your luck again with that rabbit. Wiping your face with your sleeve doesn't help wake you up. So you head out anyway. It's the same old wooden spear. It's the same leather pouch. Nothing extra because you don't have anything extra. It's cold and slippery outside the cave, but light gradually returns. Leaves rustle in the trees, and from a distance you can hear the sound of running water. The nearby stream. You walk toward the patch where you saw rabbit tracks yesterday. The path is easier now. You've gotten used to dodging thorns, stepping carefully on slick stones, and scanning everything from tree roots to tall grass. No one taught you. You learn by getting hurt a few times. As you reach the grassy area, you stop. Not because you see a rabbit, but because you see footprints. Not yours. These are deeper, wider. It looks like someone else from your tribe is hunting here too. You glance around but see no one. You decide to veer off in a different direction. Then you find a bush with bright red berries. You get closer, pluck one and nibble. It's a bit sour, not poisonous. You add more to your pouch. It's not a real breakfast, but it'll do. As you're picking berries, you hear footsteps. Not an animal, a human. A young man from your tribe steps out, holding a spear, eyes still sleepy. You lock eyes for a few seconds, then he nods. You nod back. No words are spoken. The Stone Age doesn't come with complete sentences, just grunts, gestures, expressions. But those 2 nods say enough. I'm not here to fight over food. And let's not stab each other. He turns right. You turn left. Both of you continue hunting, each in your direction. And somehow that feels comforting. No one laughs if you trip. No one blames you for missing a throw. Everyone understands that survival is the job. Everyone's busy. You keep going. And this time, you spot something promising. A small bird pecking at the ground. It's not big, but if you catch it, that's protein. You crouch low, hold your breath, and inch closer. Spear in hand. You throw. Miss the bird flutters away. You sigh. Pick up the spear, stick it on the ground and sit. No one expects you to be perfect. No one says, "Why didn't you catch anything?" But you know if 3 days pass without food, your body starts to weaken. And then wild animals don't need to hunt you. You'll fall on your own. You sit a bit longer. Then you head back. On the way, you spot some wild tubers, the kind you saw an elder dig up near the stream yesterday. You guessed right. You dig some up, rinse them quickly and tuck them into your pouch. Back at the cave, the sun is higher now. You roast the roots over the fire. They give off a faint, sweet smell, not meat, but warm enough to calm your stomach. You spend the rest of the afternoon sharpening your spear tip. You noticed it was chipped today, probably from hitting a rock. You take your time with a rough stone. No one's rushing you, but you know a dull spear means no dinner. Evening falls earlier than yesterday. Dark clouds roll in. Rain might be coming. You feed the fire, check your sleeping spot, and drape an extra hide over the cave entrance to block the wind. You've learned to do all these small things without anyone telling you. You don't think much about tomorrow. You know that tonight you're still awake, still eating. I still have fire. You lie down. The firelight flickers across the cave ceiling in blurry patches. Your stomach isn't empty. Your head isn't cold. Your eyelids flutter. Day 2 is over. You're still alive. This morning you wake up a little later than usual. There's no loud sound outside, just the soft pattern of rain falling gently on the ground beyond the cave. A fine mist, steady and quiet. The kind of sound that makes you want to pull the animal hide over your head and drift back to sleep. But you know better. No one calls you to get up. No alarms, schedule, or boss. But if you don't get up, there will be nothing to eat. And you know that better than anyone. You sit up, stretch, and look outside. The rain hasn't stopped. Not heavy, but just enough to make you hesitate. Out there is a damp, cold forest, but inside the cave, the only food left is 2 small dried roots from yesterday and a handful of sour berries you don't even want anymore. You strike your firestones. Luckily, yesterday you covered the embers with an old hide, so there's still a faint glow. The fire flares back to life a few sticks later, just enough to cook something if you find it. You eat the rest of the roots slowly. They don't taste good, but they keep the shivering away. Then you grab your spear and pouch. Pull an extra hide over your head and step out into the rain. The path is slicker today. Each step is careful. You turn left, heading toward the lowland patch where mushrooms and soft roots tend to grow. You're not hoping for any big game today. In this weather, animals are in hiding, but mushrooms still grow. You find a few small ones, grayish-brown with rounded tops, the kind you've seen others in the tribe eat without issue. You pick each one carefully and place them in your pouch. After collecting nearly 2 handfuls, you head toward the stream to rinse them. You sit by the water's edge. It's so cold it numbs your fingers, but you patiently wash each mushroom. When you look up, you spot a squirrel clutching a nut on a nearby branch. You look at it. It looks back. A second later, it darts away. You smile. It is a small, ordinary moment, but it makes you feel good. You forget the rain, forget the cold. You're just here existing. On the way back, you find a few dry branches caught in tree roots. You carry them too. In this weather, dry wood is more valuable than meat. Back in the cave, you drop the mushroom pouch onto a flat rock, hang the firewood up high to dry, and use a sharp stone to scrape any leftover dirt. Then you skewer the mushrooms on a wooden stick and roast them over the fire. No seasoning, no oil, but the smell of warm mushrooms still makes your stomach growl. You blow on one and take a bite. Chewy, mildly sweet and warm. You eat them all in silence. As you sit by the fire, you glance at your spear, still usable. The wooden tip isn't broken, but if a big animal comes, that spear is more for comfort than protection. You get up and walk to the corner of the cave where you keep a triangular stone. You begin sharpening the spear point slowly, steadily. The sound of stone against wood is rhythmic. Each stroke is preparation. No one tells you to do this, but you know if you don't fix it now, it won't be ready when needed. By late afternoon, the rain begins to ease. You take the chance to collect more firewood just nearby, around the thick tree trunks. Anything dry goes into your bundle, tied with a strip of hide at your belt. By nightfall, it's colder than usual. You build a bigger fire and hang more hides over the cave entrance. In the flickering light, you feel tired. Not from hunger, but a deep bone-level tiredness. The kind that comes from doing a dozen small things no one sees. But those small things are what give you a peaceful night. You lie down, pull the hide to your chin, and stare at the cave ceiling. Nothing much has changed, but you feel more familiar with this rhythm. I am no longer confused like the first day, and no longer lost, like on the second. Day 3 comes to a close. You don't have any significant accomplishments. But you had a hot meal, you have a fire, you have a dry place to sleep. You exhale slowly and close your eyes. Tomorrow can wait. This morning, you're not the first to wake up. While you're still rubbing your eyes beside the fire, root in hand, but not yet to your mouth, an older man from the tribe walks past, spear in hand, and gestures toward the edge of the forest. He signals for you to follow. You understand. Today you're joining the hunting party. No one says a word. They don't need to. You stand. Quickly throw the animal hide over your shoulder, grab your spear, and quietly fall in line. There are 4 of you, 3 adults and you. Each carries a spear, a leather pouch, and a serious expression. For them, hunting isn't a game, it's survival. The air is cool, dew clings to the grass, and a gentle wind brushes through the trees. The group moves along a narrow trail, hugging the brush and stepping lightly like shadows. No one talks, only the crunch of dry leaves underfoot, and the occasional eshush when you accidentally snap a twig. You learn quickly that in the forest, noise is the enemy. Not because predators will find you, but because prey will run before your spear leaves your hand. So when you walk, You don't take significant strides. You keep low, grip your spear tight, and follow the old tracks ahead. After about half an hour, the group halts. One man raises his hand and points to a soft patch of earth. Hoof prints. A deer. Recent. The group silently changes direction and follows the trail. Your heart is pounding, not from fear, but from excitement. This is your first time venturing this far with the hunters. You weren't given an important task, but they allowed you to come. That means they're starting to trust you. Or at least they don't think you'll get in the way. The tracks lead to a low-lying area filled with reeds. The group spreads out, each taking a position in silence. The oldest climbs a slight rise to scout. You're told to stay still, spear ready. Time moves slowly when you stand silently listening to every leaf rustle, birds call in the distance, and then a sound. Soft steps, very soft grass being pressed under cautious feet. You glance to your left. A small deer is creeping out of the brush. Its ears twitch and its nose sniffs the air. It hasn't noticed you. Your heart races. You grip your spear tightly. You lift your arm and aim, but from the other side, someone throws their spear first, just a split second before you. Thud. The deer jerks violently, then drops. No sound, no struggle. A clean hit right in the neck. You exhale. I'm disappointed, but mostly relieved. The group rushes in. You follow. The deer lies still. They inspect it, then signal success. One begins tying the legs with leather straps. Another cuts tendons with a stone blade to use for the cord. You hold their spears while they work. Your first real contribution. You feel like you've done something, even if small. Once the deer is secured, you all haul it back. The return is slower and the weight is shared. But no one complains. The day is still young and the hunt is considered good. Near the tribal area, a few people come out to look. No cheering, just nods. A woman steps forward to take the deer for processing. You're handed a small cut of meat, a fair share. You thank them with your eyes. No one expects words. You bring the meat back to your cave, stoke the fire, roast it. For the first time in 3 days, you eat real meat. Not tough, not raw, not spoiled. It's just a small piece, but it warms you from the inside out. That afternoon, you don't go out again. You stay inside, sharpening your spear, drying out your damp hide, sitting quietly by the fire. In your mind, you replay the moment you saw the deer, the tension, the calm that followed. You know you're not skilled yet. But today you took a step. Night falls. The rain has stopped. A cold breeze flows through the cave's entrance. You lie down, pull the hide over yourself, and breathe in the scent of smoke clinging to your sleeve. Day 4. Your first hunt, your first meet, your first moment of belonging. You close your eyes and think no more. Tomorrow you'll continue. Tonight the cold is sharper than usual. The wind whistles through the cracks in the stone, and the rustling leaves outside sound like dry hands sweeping across the earth. You're curled inside the cave, wrapped tightly in furs, trying to keep warm. But it's not enough. The fire has gone out. You're not sure when. Maybe the wind blew too hard. You may have forgotten to add more wood. Either way, it's a pile of grey ash with faint embers glowing like weak little breaths. You sigh and get up. It's still dark, but you know sleep won't come without fire. Cold in the Stone Age isn't a joke. It creeps into your bones and draws the heat out of you. By morning, you'll wake with blue lips, numb fingers, and a frozen stiff body. You kneel by the ashes, checking carefully. A few dim red spots remain. That means there's still hope. You gather dry straw, press it close to the embers, and start to blow. Once, twice. You feel a bit of warmth. You keep going steadily, holding the straw in place. A tiny flame flickers to life. You quickly add a few dry sticks. The fire catches slowly at first, then begins to grow. Warm golden light spreads across the cave. You exhale in relief. The fire is back. You sit by it, holding your hands close, feeling life return to your fingertips. Without fire, everything becomes harder. Cooking, warmth, animal safety, and even seeing after dark. In the Stone Age, safety means keeping the fire alive. You remember the early days when you didn't know how to keep the fire overnight. Every morning was a complete restart, searching for dry wood and striking rocks for an hour to get a spark. Now you've learned, don't let the fire die. You step outside briefly, even though the wind stings your face. You need more wood just near the cave. You find a few small dry branches on the ground. Carry them inside and stack them beside the fire to dry further. Back in the cave, you feed the fire, take your stone knife, and sharpen a second stick, your backup spear in case the first one breaks. As you carve, you watch the flames dance. Something is calming about that flickering light. The sun begins to rise. The day's first rays shine through the cracks in the rock, mixing with the firelight into a strange, beautiful glow. You sit still, doing nothing and just watching. No one is calling you, no urgent task waits, but you know what needs to be done. First, eat. You roast the last of yesterday's mushrooms with a bit of root. There's no meat, but you're not starving. You've gotten used to these simple meals. Slow, limited, but steady. After eating, you decide not to venture far today. Instead, you'll stay near the cave, gather more dry wood, hang up your furs to dry, and improve your firekeeping. You take a few stones and arrange them in a circle around the fire. Someone in the tribe once did this. It helps block the wind and keeps the coals hot longer. You do it slowly and carefully. Then you build a small rack from 2 forked sticks and a crossbar. Firewood placed here will dry faster away from the damp ground. It's all simple work. No modern tools, no rulers, no nails, but it feels satisfying. Everything you do today has a purpose. Around noon, someone visits. Not a stranger, just someone from the tribe you rarely speak to. He's carrying a few pieces of dried meat and some wild berries. In exchange, he wants fire. You understand instantly. His fire went out. He has no live coals to restart it. You say nothing, push a stick with a glowing tip toward him. He nods, carefully takes it, and hands you the food. No extra words, but it's clear. A quiet, fair trade. Nothing more, nothing less. The afternoon fades faster than you expected. Clouds gather and the sky darkens. There's no rain, but it's clear tonight will be colder. You build the fire up bigger. Stack more dry wood nearby. Then sit quietly beside it. You think about the trade earlier. Someone needed fire. You had a fire. You shared in return. You got food. No begging, no bargaining, no tricks. You have something, and I need it. Let's share. That could be how humans survived all these thousands of years. You don't need much to survive. But you need others. And you need fire. Tonight you lie closer to the flames. The stones beneath you have warmed. You pull your furs tight and close your eyes. Outside, the wind still howls, but inside the fire still burns. And you've learned the most important lesson of all. Don't let the fire go out. The next morning, you wake up because something's missing. No wind, no rustling leaves, no birdsong. A thick, heavy silence wrapped around the cave like a cold blanket. You crack open your eyes and glance outside. The entrance is faintly white. Not fog. Snow. Snow has begun to fall for the first time since you arrived here. Not the soft postcard kind of snow. Not delicate flakes drifting in the breeze. Stone Age snow is cold, heavy, and entirely unwelcome. You pull back the fur cover and breathe out. Your breath turns instantly into a thick puff of mist. The fire still flickers faintly beside you, but last night's temperature dropped lower than before. You don't rush to get up. Your body needs time to adjust to this new cold. You pull closer to the fire, feed it with a few sticks from your stash, and sit still, watching the flame, listening to the snow fall outside. Soft but weighty. The morning starts slower than usual. You chew on the last bits of dried meat from yesterday. It's not tasty anymore, but warmth in your stomach matters more than flavor now. You sip from the leather water pouch hanging on the stone wall. The water is ice cold, enough to make your teeth ache, but thankfully not frozen thanks to being hung near the fire. When you step outside, your feet press into a thin blanket of fresh snow. Each step makes a soft crunch. You don't go far. Circle the area, checking the firewood pile and the stone windbreak you built yesterday. Luckily, everything's still in place. The firewood is dry. The fur draped over the entrance hasn't blown away. But now you understand. Winter has arrived, and it's not gentle. You head back inside, remove the outer fur layer, and hang it near the fire to warm up again. Today there's no hunting, no gathering. The animals are hiding deep. The plants are buried, and if you wander too far, you could slip or worse, get lost. Snow makes everything look the same. Blank, directionless, unforgiving. The afternoon passes in quiet work. You dry out damp furs, tighten your leather straps, and reinforce the firewood rack. These simple tasks keep you from sitting still and letting the cold sink into your bones. Midway through the day, someone from the tribe appears. No words, just 2 small bundles of firewood in his arms. You understand immediately. If you share the fire, you share wood too. He places the bundles near your entrance, nods once, then leaves. You add the wood to your dry stack, organizing your tiny supply stash. It's not much, but results from days of slow, steady preparation. Evening comes earlier now. The sun disappears behind clouds instantly, and the temperature drops sharply. You build the fire higher than usual, using the wood your visitor brought. The warm light fills the cave, and you sit close, knees pulled in, fur across your lap. You roast the last of your mushrooms and eat slowly, silently. No one talks to you, but you don't feel lonely. The fire crackles like an old companion, never saying much, but always there. The night is cold, colder than anything you've known. You can't sleep right away. You lie still, then turn over. The cold slips past your fur blanket, seeps through the stone beneath you, and finds every gap in your clothing. You scoot closer to the fire and suddenly remember someone in the tribe once mentioned using warm stones to survive cold nights. You give it a try. You find a palm-sized rock, place it beside the fire for a while, then wrap it in a scrap of woven fiber. You pull it close to your belly. Warmth, primitive, rough, but enough. It's like holding a makeshift hot water bottle. You exhale, finally able to relax. Little by little, you're learning how to survive. It's not about always being strong. It's about knowing how to use what you've got. You curl up, stone held tight against your chest, eyes growing heavy. Outside, the snow still falls. You don't know what tomorrow will bring. But you know you'll make it through tonight. You wake up while the sky is still hazy, but this time it's because someone is calling. Not loudly. Just a short whistle from outside the cave, a member of the tribe. He stands there with his arms crossed, looks at you, then turns and walks away without waiting for a reply. You understand immediately. They want you to follow. You quickly stir the fire, add a few dry branches to keep the coals alive, wrap yourself in an extra fur, grab your spear and pouch, and hurry after him. Yesterday's snow made the path slippery, but the light is clearer now. It doesn't look like it will rain. Maybe it'll be a bearable day. You're led to a clearing where several people are gathered around a large stone. No one smiles. No one speaks. Everyone is silent. One elder points to a pile of firewood nearby, then gestures for you to bring it to the center. You don't understand right away. Then someone steps forward, hands you a small piece of dried meat, and points toward the communal fire, where food is usually shared among the tribe. Then it clicks. Yesterday, you kept the last piece of dried meat for yourself, not out of greed. You thought, I'll eat it later. But food should be shared in their way of life, especially when it's cold and resources are scarce. Keeping it, even a small piece, is an unspoken message. I'm separate from the group. You're not scolded, no one yells. But being called out this morning, being handed new meat, and being asked to bring it back to the fire is their way of reminding you. If we live together, we share. You nod. You don't speak. You gently carry the meat over to the communal fire. A few others are already cooking something on hot stones. You place your portion at the edge and sit beside them. No one smiles, but no one avoids you either. And that's where the conversation ends. A while later, a young boy hands you a sharpened roasting stick like he's saying, "Here, eat like the rest of us." You take it and feel a lightness in your chest. No one stays upset for long. You have to understand and adjust. The morning passes with the crackling of the fire and the smell of warm food drifting through the air. You bite into a freshly grilled piece of meat, chew slowly and glance around. The stern faces have softened. After the meal, you return to your cave, carrying a few wild roots someone left for you, part of the shared portion. Not much, but enough to remind you that you're still part of this place. You spend the afternoon tidying your sleeping area and building an extra wind barrier with branches and fur. Your hands are busy, but your mind feels calm. No one blamed you, but the trib's unspoken rules are clear. That evening, as you stoke your fire, you hear footsteps. The same elder from the morning approaches and hands you a small stone, a sharpening stone for spears, it seems. His hands are calloused, his back slightly bent, but his eyes hold no resentment. You accept it with a nod of thanks. He sits nearby and silently begins sharpening his spear. You sit beside him, mimicking his movements. The two of you sit together, working beside the fire, no words exchanged. After a while, he stands, nods again, and walks away. You look down at the new sharpening stone in your hand and understand you've been forgiven. No speech, no excuses, just learn. Carry on and don't repeat the mistake. That night you sleep with a lighter heart. The fire burns steady, your stomach is full, and deep down you know you still have a place in this tribe. You're not perfect, but you've learned. And in the Stone Age, to learn is to survive. You wake up to a grey, overcast sky. It's not as cold as yesterday, but it's not pleasant either. It's just one of those days where you can't tell what's waiting for you. You sit up and rekindle the fire from the faint red coals. The motions are now second nature. Your hands know where the kindling goes and how to blow without scattering the ash. A small flame comes to life again, warm and peaceful. After a simple breakfast of roasted roots and a few leftover wild berries, you plan to head to the stream to collect water. But before you can leave, someone from the tribe shows up. This time it's a young man. Not here to summon you for hunting, but to hand you a brown pouch made of animal hide, then gesture for you to follow him. You're a little confused, but you go along. He leads you to a much larger cave farther from where you live. This cave is vast, with daylight filtering through cracks in the ceiling. Along the stone walls, you see faded drawings, people, animals, trees, handprints. Several others are sitting around a large flat rock in the center, carving with sharp sticks or smearing colored paste from crushed stones onto the wall. You realize this is where they record what happened, not with writing, with pictures. An older woman motions for you to sit beside a large stone slab. She places a piece of charcoal and a lump of red clay in your hands. You look at her, then at the blank rock wall before you. There are no instructions, but somehow you understand. Today you will draw. You start with something simple, a handprint. You press your colored hand to the wall. A faint fading mark appears, drawing slowly with time. Then you add more. A tree, a deer, and finally a figure with a spear. Maybe it's you. Perhaps it's someone you remember. No one comments, no praise, no judgment. But everyone glances your way. Then they quietly continue with their work. You don't feel excluded. Someone draws the hunting scene from a few days ago, a deer mid-sprint, a spear in mid-air. Another draws a hand holding fire in black pigment. One person draws only dots. No one is better, no one is showing off. Each person is simply recording what they remember. As if to say, I saw this. I was there. You're unsure if this is a ritual or a daily habit, but it calms you. In the crude lines of charcoal and the simple animal figures, you feel like you understand this place, and the people in it just a bit more. The drawing session lasts until midday. Then, without a word, people rinse their hands, pack up their pigments, and leave as quietly as they came. You do the same, though an older woman glances at you as you wash your hands. She nods gently. No smile, no words, but you get it. She's pleased. You return to your cave. Nothing's changed. The fire is still burning. Your pouch hangs where it always does. But something in you feels different, lighter, easier, as if you've left a small piece of yourself on that cave wall. That afternoon, you don't do anything special. You tidy up some leather cords, dry more firewood, and check your supplies. Everything is still usable, but your mind lingers on the images, the handprints, the dots, the animals. You realize that even without words, people have always tried to speak, to tell stories, and be remembered. Night comes quietly, no snow, no rain, a calm night. You sit by the fire, take a leftover piece of charcoal, and casually draw your handprint on a flat stone by your bed, just for fun. No one sees it, but you smile to yourself. Oddly, that tiny gesture brings you peace. You wrap yourself in furs. The fire burns steady. A warm stone rests against your stomach. Your eyes begin to close. Today, you didn't hunt, forage, or light someone else's fire. You just drew. And somehow that was enough to let the day pass. This morning, you woke up a bit later than usual. Not because you were tired, but because no one came to get you. No one needed you for hunting. No one required firewood, and no one was waiting for you to share a meal. A rare day with no tasks. Still, you rekindled the fire, roasted some roots, drank water, and reorganized your pouch. All slowly. The weather today wasn't rainy nor sunny, just a gentle warmth in the air, enough that your breath didn't show every time you opened your mouth. You planned to stay in the cave all day. But then, as you were hanging up a bundle of dried leather cords, you saw someone pass by. It was her. A girl from the tribe, not much older than you, is usually seen tending the morning fire near the communal space. Before, you'd only nodded when you crossed paths. Today was the same. She looked at you and nodded. You nodded back, and she kept walking. But you didn't want to return to the cave immediately this time. You stepped outside. No real reason. You strolled toward the communal hearth where some elders dried animal skins and a few kids tossed rocks into tree hollows. And there she was by the stream washing a stone bowl. You approached not too close, just near enough to sit down, take out your water skin, sip quietly, and pretend to adjust your cord ties. She kept washing. She didn't look at you, but she didn't leave either. A moment later, she turned and held out half of a red fruit. No words. You took it, bit into it, slightly sour, a little sweet. You nodded. Good. She smiled, and that was enough for the morning. You went back to your cave, still thinking about the taste of the fruit and how she smiled without saying a thing. It wasn't a grand gesture, but in these times, sometimes just having someone stay when you're nearby feels like a lot. That afternoon, as you were carving a few geometric lines into a stone slab in the corner, she showed up again. No announcement, no calling your name. She just walked in, placed a small bundle of fragrant leaves by the fire, and sat down. You looked at her, confused for a moment. Then you understood. The leaves were for burning. People in the tribe often burned them when the air had been damp for too long. You scooted some embers her way. She placed the leaves over them. The smoke curled up gently, smelling spicy and a little sweet. Neither of you spoke, but you felt at ease. After a while, she stood and glanced around your cave as if she were checking if you were living all right. Then she pointed to a spot on the wall where you'd drawn the deer in the handprint the other day. You nodded. She smiled again, then left. That night you sat alone by the fire, but it didn't feel like every other night. Something had shifted. Just a little, but enough to make you linger by the fire longer than usual, thinking about the morning. No flowers, no gifts, no promises. Half a fruit, a handful of leaves, and a few silent minutes shared. In these times, feelings didn't have names. No one taught you how to speak them, and no books told you how to make an impression. But the feelings were still there, maybe even more clearly than any words. You remembered the first time you saw her, crouched over the fire, hands smudged with soot, hair messy, eyes sharp. You didn't think much then, just another member of the group. But today, you wanted to remember a few more details. You lay down later than usual. The fire was still burning. You pulled the furs over yourself and closed your eyes. No grand dreams, just a quiet hope that tomorrow if she walks by again, you'll nod. And maybe she'll nod back. The next morning began like any other. The fire still glowing, the air not too cold, and you still in one piece. But just a few hours later, everything stopped being normal. You were out fetching water. The path to the stream was familiar. You passed the usual damp bushes and picked up a few dry twigs along the way. Water pouch in hand. Mind drifting to how you'd dry out the animal hide that got damp the night before. Then you slipped. Just one step. Your foot landed on a mossy rock, slipperier than expected. You fell hard, your knee slamming into the ground. A sharp stone scraped your skin. Not deep, but torn. Blood welled up in a bright red streak. You sat up, gritting your teeth, inspecting the wound. Nothing broken, but it hurt, and it was dirty. You wiped away the blood, then limped onward to the stream. The icy water made you shiver, but you bent down to wash the wound. The small stone fell out. You winced. No antiseptic, no bandages, just cold stream water, chilly air, and a raw gash about 2 fingers long. You didn't panic, but you knew if you didn't keep the wound clean, infection would come faster than any wild animal. You rested by the stream a while, then tore a scrap of cloth from your leather pouch and wrapped it around your knee, tying it with a thin cord. It's not pretty, not secure, but enough to keep out the dirt. Then you limped back to your cave. And there she was, squatting by your fire, hands full of leaves. When she saw you limping, her brows furrowed. You didn't plan to say anything, but she stood, walked over, and motioned for you to sit. You did. She quietly removed your makeshift bandage, examined the wound without a word, then crushed a handful of leaves from her pouch and pressed them onto the cut. The smell was sharp and slightly spicy, but not unpleasant. Probably antiseptic, something the tribe often used. She wrapped the wound with a thin leather cord, tighter and cleaner than your attempt. Not too snug, not too loose, just enough to hold firm. When she was done, she placed the leaf pouch beside you, then stood and left without another glance. Just a short, firm nod. You sat still, the knee still HAE. But that moment of care, wordless and calm, eased more than the leaves. You spent the rest of the day inside the cave. No trips, no hunting, no firewood runs. Just light chores, adjusting the windbreak, tending the fire, sharpening the backup spear with your good hand. Each movement of your leg sent a fresh jolt of pain. But you got used to it. It could be better tomorrow or not. Either way, all you could do now was wait and stay clean. Toward evening, someone from the tribe stopped by. They dropped off a few roasted roots and a small bundle of dried mushrooms near the cave entrance. No words, then they left. You nodded in thanks, even if they didn't look back. You understood. Everyone gets hurt. And here, no one stays alone for too long. That night, you slowly roasted your new food, eating quietly. Then sit by the fire, sharpening your spear again. Not because it needed it, but because keeping your hands busy helped distract you from the pain. The night wind rustled softly. The fire crackled. A faint trace of the fragrant leaves from earlier still lingered in the air. You closed your eyes for a moment, then opened them again. The pain hadn't gone, but it wasn't unbearable. Before lying down, you added wood to the fire, then carefully propped your injured leg against a warm rock near the flames to keep blood flowing and ward off the cold. You pulled the fur over you, shifted to one side to avoid pressure on your knee, and exhaled slowly. Your first injury in the Stone Age. Not the best kind of day, but you made it through. And here, just making it through. That's enough. You woke up earlier than usual, not because the fire went out, not because of the cold, but because of unfamiliar footsteps outside the cave. Not hurried, not heavy, just the slow, deliberate steps of humans. Pausing now and then moving on. No voices, no calling your name, but you knew they weren't from your tribe. You sat up, tightened your fur cloak, and grabbed your spear out of habit, not for defense, but to feel steadier. Then you stepped outside. The morning had barely begun. The ground was still misty, but you saw 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, walking along the forest's edge, silent as shadows. They didn't look at you, but they saw you. The group stopped a few paces away, not too close. None of them seemed hostile, but none looked friendly either. They wore different furs, carried larger packs, and their weapons were longer than yours. A real spear tipped with finely shaped stone. One of them, the oldest man, took a slow step forward and raised both hands to shoulder height. Not high, not clenched. A quiet way of saying we mean no harm. You nodded, holding your spear at your side, but not pointing it. Then you gestured toward the center of the settlement where people usually gathered. The man nodded back. Then the group continued without a word, without looking back. You stayed still, watching until they disappeared into the trees. It's not frightening, but not entirely comforting either. You returned to your cave, added wood to the fire, rinsed your face with cold water from your pouch, and headed quickly toward the communal grounds. Just as you guessed, the whole tribe had gathered. I was not in a panic, but everyone was there. The newcomers, the group of 4, sat just outside the circle, keeping a respectful distance. No one chased them off, but no one approached either. An elder, the one who usually leads the hunts, stepped forward. He offered the visitors some dried meat, then gestured something with his hands. The older man from the other group nodded and pulled a small block of salt from his pouch, placing it in the circle center. Eyes lit up. Salt, something impossible to find nearby. It's more valuable than any pelt. No one spoke, but the mood immediately softened. A woman from your tribe gestured for them to sit by the fire. They accepted. The group sat without crowding, without scanning the area. They moved like people who had traveled far, used to being watched. You stood at the edge of the gathering, doing nothing, just quietly observing. Later, you were asked to bring more firewood. As you passed the newcomers, the youngest woman in their group gave you a brief smile. Software. You nodded back, saying nothing. For the next few hours, the group ate, warmed themselves, and traded more items. A sturdy leather pouch for 2 flint stones, and a roughly woven cloth for a set of bone hooks. No words, just give, receive, nod. By late afternoon, the 4 stood. They bowed slightly to the elder, then turned and walked away, continuing their journey. No one stopped them. No one followed. They arrived like mist, and they left just the same. You watched them fade into the forest. Only a few hours had passed, but something felt different. You didn't know where they came from or where they were going. But you realized something. The world was bigger than you thought. You used to believe it was just your tribe, your familiar forest, your shallow stream, your clearing of land. But beyond that, there were other groups with different lives, tools, and even eyes. That night, you didn't fall asleep right away. You sat by the fire, staring into the glowing coals, thinking about those early footsteps. The quiet nod, the small block of salt, and the brief smile from someone whose name you'll never know. You felt smaller, but not sad. Because for the first time, you understood that the Stone Age wasn't just about surviving. It was about being part of a vast, unseen world. One no one had drawn a map for yet. After that brief encounter with the strangers the day before, you started paying more attention to the small things, especially how they dressed. And you noticed something. None of them dressed like you. Their furs were light in color, cut short and neat, stitched tightly. Their cords were finer, not frayed, and most striking shoes. Actual shoes, not the wraparound scraps of hide you've been tying around your feet all this time. So this morning, you decided to look at your little collection. You spread everything you had out on the cave floor. A worn, smoke-scented pelt, a thicker, stiff piece of hide, a few small cords, and a leftover scrap of fur from the last skin-sharing day. Not much, but enough for something. You started with your feet. They'd grown rough from days of walking, scratched, bruised, aching. You re-wrapped a piece of hide around them, tied it tighter this time, then stood and took a few test steps. It's still sore but less slippery. You smiled. That's a start. Next, you reinforce your outer fur. A few stitches had come loose. The edges were fraying. You must work slowly and carefully, using a bone needle and plant thread, mimicking the older folks' methods. The needle didn't always go through cleanly, but you went stitch by stitch until the seam held again. You had a bit of thin hide left. Not enough for clothes, but maybe a small pouch. You cut a rectangle, folded it, stitched two edges, left the top open, and threaded a drawstring through. It wasn't fancy, but could hold flintstones and some resin. The kind of item that makes your life just a little easier. While you were focused on stitching, a young boy from the tribe wandered over. He crouched nearby, watching you, silent. You nodded to him. He didn't respond. I just kept watching. When you finished the pouch, he reached into his belt and handed you a thin piece of softened bark beaten into something like crude cloth. You took it about to ask something, but he ran off before you could. It could be an encouragement, or perhaps he just thought you needed it. You wrapped the bark around your spear grip. It gave you a better hold and protected your hand from strain. It's a slight improvement, but it gave you a tiny sense of style too. That afternoon, you decided to walk into the center clearing wearing your newly patched gear. Not to show off, but to see what it felt like to be tidier. To your surprise, a few people noticed. Soon, a woman from the tribe came over and looked at the pouch on your belt. She pointed at it, raising her eyebrows. You opened it to show her. She nodded, then handed you a long strip of rabbit hide cord. Soft, light, perfect for a shoulder strap. You traded her one of your sharp stone flakes. No words were exchanged. Just trade, nod, and done. That night, sitting beside the fire, your new pouch hanging on a wooden peg nearby. You didn't feel as thrown together as you used to. Everything was still basic, but now you knew how to make things functional, sturdier, longer lasting. And more than that, you realized that dressing in the Stone Age wasn't about looking good. It was about surviving better. But if you could survive and feel a little put together, well, that wasn't bad either. You lay down. Your legs still ached, but your mind was light. Outside, the wind whistled past the cave, but inside, the fire burned steady, casting warm flickers on the wall in the little pouch hanging neatly beside it. No one asked anything of you today. And yet you got a lot done for yourself. This morning, just as you finished starting the fire and were warming your hands, someone from the tribe walked past and gestured toward the clearing in the forest. You understood right away. Today was a gathering. You pulled on another layer of fur, strapped your pouch to your side, and picked up your short spear out of habit. Not for fighting, but because it's simply part of you now. Something that belongs in your hand whenever you leave the cave. You made your way down the mossy trail, past familiar caves, and over slick stones until you arrived. The clearing was more crowded than usual. No one spoke much. Each person found a place. On a rock, a tree stump, or simply on the dirt, forming a loose circle around a large central stone. On top of it, someone was preparing a small bundle of kindling. You found a seat near the outer edge. No one looked your way, but you felt accepted. Still a bit apart, but no longer an outsider. An elder stood up and struck two stones together. Tap, tap, tap. Not to make fire, but to call for attention. Everyone went quiet. The elder pointed to the kindling and signaled a younger person to light it. You watched closely how they arranged the dry grass, blew gently, and waited patiently. It was precisely what you've done dozens of times in your cave. But it felt more solemn here in front of the circle. The fire caught. Everyone stared into it. Then one by one, people rose, stepped forward, and placed something near the flame. Someone laid down a sharpening stone. Another a bundle of twigs. One person a small leather pouch. One pressed their palm to the earth in silence before returning to their seat. And you understood this was how they shared. Not through words, but through offerings. Each item said something, a lesson, a reminder, a memory, or maybe just, I'm here. You hadn't brought anything. But then the middle-aged man sitting beside you nudged a branch toward you and looked over. You took it, stood up slowly, and stepped into the center. You laid the branch down beside the fire. You didn't speak. No one expected you to. But inside you, something let go. A slow, quiet exhale. You had taken part. After everyone had contributed, the elder stood again and pointed in different directions. The forest, the river, the hunting paths, and the firewood area. Each gesture came with a nod or a shake of the head as if offering a report. A few others also stood, holding up objects to emphasize specific points. No one argued, No one shouted or interrupted. Just silence, flame, and gestures. You understood the pieces. Fewer animals were spotted, so the hunting ground may need to shift. The nearby stream turned cloudy after the rains. It needs checking. The firewood pile needs more cover with strong winds coming. No votes, no commands, just understanding. And when the elder bowed slightly and leaned forward to blow out the central fire, the meeting ended. No one rushed to leave. People lingered for a moment, as if letting everything settle inside them. Then they rose one by one and walked off. No reminders. Everyone already knew what came next. You returned to your cave, carrying with you a slight shift. Nothing huge, but real. Before you had lived next to them. Today, you live with them. That afternoon, you chipped your spearhead sharper and added an extra cord around the tip. You also gathered more dry grass for later, restacked your firewood, and etched a few marks onto a stone near the cave entrance. Your way of remembering that you had added wood to the fire this morning. By nightfall, the flames burned steady, and the wind outside whispered in a rhythm like a long, slow breath. You sat quietly beside the fire, doing nothing and just listening. You had gone to a meeting today, and in the Stone Age, that meant something simple but powerful. You were no longer alone. You forgot to check the firewood before going to sleep. Everything happened as usual. You ate a bit of leftover roasted roots, drank some water, then lay down and pulled your fur covering over you. There was no particular worry on your mind. The wind outside blew steadily. The fire still glowed beside you. Your eyes slowly closed, but in the middle of the night you woke up cold. The cold didn't announce itself. It didn't knock. It slipped down your collar, crept along your back, and brushed your neck like a frozen fingertip. You opened your eyes and sat up. The cave was darker than usual. There was no warm glow dancing across the stone walls. You looked to the side. The fire was out. Not a single member. Only cold ash, blackened wood, and a hollow stillness spread across the space. You hadn't let the fire die overnight since learning to keep it alive. But tonight, one small mistake. Forgetting to add more wood before bed was enough to turn this night into a lesson. You huddled close to the ashes, reaching out to feel for any remaining warmth. Nothing, completely cold with no fire. You couldn't cook. You couldn't stay warm. You couldn't keep animals at bay. And if someone unknown from another tribe came near during the night, you had no way to signal danger. You sighed, then stood up. Outside was pitch black. The wind was light but constant, carrying moisture in the air. You wrapped yourself in your fur, tightened your pouch, and grabbed a flint stone and some dry tinder. You sat silently in a wind-sheltered corner near the mouth of the cave. You began to make fire again. 2 stones, one rough, one smooth. You were familiar with the grip. You tapped gently again and again. A minute passed, then 2. Your hands ached. Your back throbbed. No spark. You paused. I took a deep breath, shifted your position, tried again. Suddenly a faint spark jumped, then vanished. You quickly brought the tinder closer. Another spark, then another. Finally one caught. Smoke curled upward. You blew gently again until a faint red ember began to glow, nestled in the tinder. You kept blowing. The ember grew. You added thin bark. The fire sprang to life, small but real. It felt like someone had gently rested a hand on your shoulder and said, "Good." You didn't cheer. You just exhaled and kept feeding the flame. More twigs, then thicker wood until the light returned, casting soft shadows on the stone walls. Not bright, but enough to see your tired face flickering in the cave. You didn't go back to sleep. You sat beside the fire, legs pulled close, leaning against the rock wall. The night passed slowly but peacefully. Warmth gradually returned. You placed a warm stone beside your foot, leaned your head on your arm, and drifted into a light doze while the fire burned steadily beside you. At dawn, someone from the tribe passed by your cave. Seeing you, they nodded and gestured. "Are you okay?" You nodded. No explanation is needed. Just one night without fire. Not a big deal. But for you, it was a reminder. Never get careless. You had a dry mushroom breakfast, drank cool water, and started collecting more firewood. You wouldn't make the same mistake twice. You gathered dry branches early, cut them into smaller pieces, prepared tinder and bark. Everything was neatly placed near your hearth. You tired more quickly than usual that afternoon, having slept little the night before. But you still had enough energy to adjust your sleeping area and build a simple rack of stones and sticks to keep the wood off the ground. By evening, you lit the fire early. You didn't wait until nightfall. This time the fire burned brighter. You placed a large stone nearby to retain heat. Then hang your tinder pouch on a wall hook in case there is a next time. Sitting beside the flames, you realized you'd learned another lesson. Not a skill, but a lesson in caution. In this age, a careless night could cost more than just a bit of sleep. You lay down, pulled the furs over you, and closed your eyes. The fire burned beside you. The ash was dry. The wood was ready. Tonight you won't forget. This morning you woke up earlier than usual, feeling itchy in a way you couldn't ignore. You weren't sick. You weren't injured, but your body was definitely having a moment. To put it bluntly, you stank. It wasn't the scent of smoke that you could tolerate. No, this was something far worse. A stew of old sweat, damp animal hide, and caked dirt had accumulated for over 2 weeks. You leaned down to sniff your tunic and instantly recoiled. This wasn't a minor issue anymore. You ran a hand through your hair. It was greasy. Your scalp itched. Your fingernails were crusted with dirt, and your feet better not look. You'd been wearing the same pair of leather wrappings for 10 days. No socks, no drying in the sun. It was no wonder that today you didn't just feel tired. You felt vile. You made a decision. Today you were going to get clean. But getting clean in the Stone Age didn't mean stepping into a mint-scented power shower. You gathered a handful of fragrant leaves, the kind your tribe usually burned for their soothing aroma, and found a few smooth stones. Then you headed to a quiet stream bend near your usual foraging spot. No one bathed near the cooking area or shared paths. It was both respectful and frankly hygienic. When you arrived, your leather footwear was the first thing to come off. The smell hit you like a club. You winced, then peel off your high tunic, turn it inside out, and inspect the damage. Dust, matted hair, and minor tears. You set it aside and stepped slowly into the stream. The water was ice cold. It sliced your skin like tiny knives, but you were used to it. You sat on a smooth, low stone and began to scrub. You used the rounded stones to scrape your hands, arms, and back. Then dunk your head, massaging in the crushed leaves. The scent was sharp, earthy, almost medicinal. You had no idea how clean you were getting, but at least you were trying. By the third round of scrubbing, the water around you had turned a cloudy grey. You waded into the current to rinse, letting the stream carry away weeks of grime. Then you sat still, eyes closed, exhaling slowly. You felt lighter, not just physically, but mentally too. You washed your clothes next. There was no harsh scrubbing, just soaking, light twisting, and a few thacks against the rocks to shake out the filth. You found a branch stretching out over the stream and hung your things to dry. Then, bare-chested, you sat on a warm rock, soaking in the sun. No one passed by. No one interrupted. Just the water, the rustle of leaves, and the steady hum of nature. You thought, wish I had some soap. Then you thought again. But even if I did, I probably wouldn't know how to use it properly. You remembered how back in modern times, getting clean meant turning on a faucet. A few minutes and you were fresh. Here, just one proper wash required morning planning. Gathering leaves, finding stones, bringing water, and choosing the right time and place. And even then, it might not count as clean. But here, cleanliness wasn't about looking good. It was about avoiding infections. It was about not itching. It was about not being an easy scent trail for predators. You slipped back into your now mostly dry, thin tunic, tied on your pouch, and headed back before the wind picked up. Once home, you lit a small fire to warm your heavier clothes. The scent of those herbal leaves still lingered faintly in your hair. You felt better, noticeably better. That afternoon, you visited the central area to trade some roots for dried fruit. As you stood nearby, someone glanced your way, then sniffed the air. You turned to look. He nodded approvingly. No smile, no words. But you understood. Today, at least, no one was stepping away when you stood near. Back at your cave, the feeling was like returning to a freshly cleaned home after a long bout of laziness. Nothing was new, but everything felt tidier, more breathable. That evening, you tossed a few more fragrant leaves into the fire, letting the smoke seep into the cave. No one had to teach you this. You just knew that cleanliness wasn't just about your body, it was about the space around you. You lay down, hair dry, back dry, and the fur beneath you finally not musty. It was the first night in many days that you didn't feel itchy as soon as you lay down. You exhaled softly and closed your eyes. There was no hot water, no lotion. But in the Stone Age, you could stay clean if you tried. The morning sky is clear. After several cold days, gentle sunlight spills across the narrow path from your cave to the forest's edge. The soft golden light bathes the trees, making everything feel calmer than usual. Thanks to yesterday's rare bath, there's no lingering smoke in the air and no body odor either. You've just finished lighting the fire and are roasting a few thin slices of root when someone from the tribe approaches, nods and gestures toward the distance. You understand immediately. Today, you're going to help set traps. Not a hunt, no chasing, no spear throwing, just finding the right spots, setting the traps, and letting time do the rest. You pull on a light hide cloak and grab your pouch with some cord, a sharpening stone and leftover bait from a past meal. 2 people walk ahead and you follow. As usual, no one speaks. All communication is in gestures, glances, and footsteps. The path leads to a lower marshy forest edge with soft grass marked with signs of small animals. The one in front stops and uses a stick to sweep gently across the ground. You can see rabbit tracks, faint paired prints leading into the undergrowth. Your motion to help dig a small pit. Your hands sink into the cool, damp soil. Each handful brings up a mix of dirt and stubborn roots clinging between your fingers. It's not hard, just slow. Everything out here demands patience. Once the hole is deep enough, the other person sets a crude but clever trap. Just a loop of leather cord rigged to a bent wooden branch. At the end of it, they place bait, a fragrant root or a slightly sour fruit. The trap is then hidden under a layer of dried grass and leaves. Very carefully, very neatly. It looks like nothing more than part of the forest floor from a distance. You find it oddly satisfying. You're asked to set another trap nearby. Same idea, but it's your first time doing it. Your fingers fumble, the loop slips, the bait falls out. You try again, it's still too loose. The elder steps over, silently tightens the knot, and places your hand on it with a simple gesture. Go slower. You try again. This time it works. No praise, but no corrections either. That means good enough. The group sets about 5 traps spaced a few meters apart, all tucked neatly into bushes, near game paths, or beside fruit tree roots. Each one is marked with an inverted stone, a subtle tribal sign, so no one steps on it by mistake. Once the last trap is set, everyone heads back. No one carries anything. Traps take time. 1 day, maybe 3, perhaps nothing. But that's part of life here, consistently placing hope in what you cannot control. That afternoon, you sit and resharpen your spear tip, adjust the strap on your pouch, and wash the fresh pine resin you collected. In your head, you replay the steps of trap setting, the nodding of the loop, the reading of tracks, the careful camouflage. You don't expect to become an expert, but you like the feeling of doing something quietly and letting it work independently. That night, you stay in. You sit in the cave, listening to the fire crackle and the soft wind whisper across the entrance. The fire casts your shadow on the cave wall, and for a second, it feels like there's someone else sitting beside you, also holding a spear. Also silent. Not loneliness, just familiarity with silence. You close your eyes, thinking of the morning, the cool earth under your hands. That first loop is slipping, the Elas's hand adjusting yours without scolding. You think it's okay to go slow, just don't quit. And then you fall asleep. No vivid dreams, just the quiet knowledge that there might be nothing in the traps tomorrow. but at least now you know how to set them. The next morning, you woke up feeling nothing in particular. No rain, no sun. It was just a slightly cold, overcast, sleepy morning. You sat up, rekindled the fire, toasted a few leftover root slices and drank cool water. As you straightened your pouch strap, you heard footsteps outside the cave. It was her, the girl you sometimes ran into. She is quiet, her head often bowed and she carries the scent of fragrant leaves in her hair. Today she stepped closer than usual. In her hand was a small pouch, made of soft tree bark. She said nothing, set it beside the fire, and sat far from you. Not too far, not too close. You looked at the pouch. Light. When you opened it, you found a few pieces of sun-dried bark, 2 small red berries, and an animal tooth, possibly a fox's, threaded onto a thin string like a pendant. You looked up. She wasn't looking at you. I just sat there quietly drawing circles in the dirt with a small stick. Gently, unhurriedly, as if nothing of importance were happening. You didn't know what to say. But really, you don't need to say anything. You picked up the tooth and examined it. Smooth, not sharp, with a clean hole bored through the root, just the size of the string and made with care. Not something left over, not accidental. You didn't put it on right away. Just hold it in your hand for a moment, then place it back in the pouch and set it aside like you were keeping something valuable. Not because it was rare, but because you didn't want to lose it. She stood up and gave a slight nod, still silent, then walked away. You sat there a while longer. The fire crackled steadily. A soft breeze stirred dry leaves outside the cave, spinning them in slow circles. You weren't sure what the tooth meant. Maybe a thank you, a greeting, or perhaps it was how people at this time said they remembered you. You used to think you lived apart, but maybe someone had been noticing you more than you thought. Around midday, you went to check the traps you'd set 2 days earlier. Walking with another group member, no one spoke of anything personal. I just walked, looked, checked, and reset several empty traps. Only one had sprung, but nothing inside. The cord had snapped. Maybe the animal got away. You weren't disappointed. You knew that happened often, but you marked the spot. Next time you might secure it better. On the way back, you walked a bit slower. I stopped under a tree to pick a few ripe red berries. Not many, just enough to slip into the pouch at your side. You plan to keep a few. The rest maybe leave beside the fire next time she comes. Back at the cave that afternoon, you took out the animal tooth again. No one else was around, just the fire in you. You tied it to a thin leather cord and slipped it around your neck. A snug fit, not uncomfortable. It felt strange initially, but you forgot it was there after a while. That evening, when you went to the central area to trade for a few dried fruits, she was there too, helping an elder tie up a bundle of roots. She didn't look at you, but when you turned to leave, you knew she saw you wearing the necklace. No words were spoken, but everything was clear enough. You didn't know if it was affection. In the Stone Age, that concept wasn't so defined. No one said, "I like you." No one gave flowers or wrote letters. But every glance, every item exchanged, every moment of quiet, sitting beside each other without speaking, it all said enough. That night you lay in the cave, the fire burning low. The tooth still rested on your chest, warmed by your body. You closed your eyes and exhaled softly. At this time, no one says, "I miss you." They leave a little pouch by the fire, and somehow that's enough. It all started very small, a sharp ache in your right jaw when you bit into a slightly overcooked root. You stopped, bit gently again. Pain. Not the kind that stings like cold, not the jolt of a cut, but a deep, dull ache within the bone. Hard to pinpoint with no clear start or end. You chewed on the left side. It's still edible, but not pleasant. You figured hit something hard, but by noon, the pain was still there. When you yawned, it became clearer. Your right cheek felt warm, slightly swollen, no fever. But you knew this wasn't just nothing. At this time, a toothache means no dentist, no painkillers, no fillings, no extractions, no antiseptic rinses. Only cold stream water and maybe some folk knowledge if you're lucky. You didn't go hunting that day. You stayed in the cave and chewed a few dry mushrooms, carefully avoiding the sore side. Then you went to find an elder in the tribe, the same one who treated your leg injury with leaves days ago. You pointed to your cheek, winced, then mimed biting your hand. He understood immediately. He nodded, rummaged through his pouch, and took out a pinch of dark powder and a small bundle of leaves. He motioned for you to sit. He crushed the leaves, dipped them in the powder, then applied them to the outside of your cheek. Not for you to chew, to press against the skin. Warmth spread. A pungent, spicy scent filled your nose. You sat still like that for nearly half an hour, motionless. With every passing minute, the pain dulled a bit. Not gone, but eased. Then he removed the leaves, nodded with satisfaction, and handed you the remaining batch to use if needed. You thanked him with your eyes. He nodded again and walked away without another word. That afternoon, you rested near the fire. I didn't anything strenuous. It didn't go far. I just carved a small wooden spoon. The idea came after realizing you'd need to eat without chewing much. You carved slowly. The stone blade was dull, so every cut took patience, but the task distracted you from the pain, and when finished, the spoon was lopsided, but usable. That night, you ate with the spoon. No biting. I'm just scooping bits of mashed root and warmed mushrooms. It felt strange, but it worked. You weren't hungry. You weren't tired. You just felt your body was adapting. You remembered those first days here when even a small scratch could throw you into a panic. And now here you were pressing leaf pusses to a toothache, carving spoons to make eating easier and knowing how not to make things worse. As you lay down, you set the remaining leaf mix near your sleeping spot. The fire was still burning. A soft glow danced on the cave wall. The animal tooth necklace from yesterday is still hanging around your neck, colder now than before. You pulled the hide blanket up to your chin and tilted your head slightly to the left, the side that didn't hurt. And you thought to yourself, tomorrow will be better. Nothing's ever certain in this age, but sometimes believing in tomorrow is part of surviving. This morning, you felt better. The toothache was still there, a dull reminder rather than the sharp jab it had been the day before. You ate slowly, leaning to the left, scooping small bites with the wooden spoon you'd carved. Everything moved slowly but smoothly. No one called you to hunt, and there was no urgent work. So you decided to find something to do, something light but valuable. You remembered the pile of bark drying beside one of the tribe shelters. The woman who lived there often sat weaving it into the cord. You walked over. You didn't ask. I just stood nearby and waited. She, a middle-aged woman, glanced at you once, then kept working. Her hands twisted thin bark strands, pairing and nodding them with practiced ease. You sat down, keeping some distance. After a while, she pushed a small bundle of soft bark fibers toward you, motioning for you to try. You took it, but you were still unsure what to do. She repeated the motion slowly, splitting the fibers, twisting each half in opposite directions, and then crossing them over. You copied her. Your first strand was a mess. Uneven, slack. But she didn't laugh. I didn't fix it. She just continued with her work. You untangled it and tried again. This time it was tighter. Still crooked, but it looked like something. The morning passed in silence like that. Two people twisting the cord, each in their own space. No questions, no conversation, just the soft rasp of plant fibers tightening between rough fingers. By noon, you had a strand about an arm's length long. Not pretty, but strong. The woman looked at it, gave a slight nod, then handed you a sharp piece of wood, gesturing that you could use it to tie your pouch strap or fasten a spear. You took it, nodded back, and stood up, feeling lighter. You hadn't expected a twisting cord to make a morning pass quickly. You used the cord to repair your pouch's loose strap that afternoon. Making something you needed, even small, made you feel closer to this place. No longer just a newcomer, taking what was given. While you were rekindling the fire that evening, she came by again. She didn't bring anything. They didn't say anything. She just sat across the fire, leaning against the stone, arms resting on her knees. The two of you sat quietly watching the flames, not speaking. After a while, you held up the cord you'd made and showed her. She looked at it, took it, gave it a gentle tug, strong. Then she nodded, set it back down next to you, and the corner of her mouth curled slightly, like she might smile but wasn't ready to. No praise is needed. That glance was enough. The fire burned steadily that night. The woodpile was whole and the wind was gentle. You lay down with the animal tooth still hanging from your neck. Your knee not sore, your tooth not throbbing. Beside you lay your first twisted cord, uneven, frayed, but yours. Not everyone can make something big in times like these, but if you can make your cord, you're already living better than you did yesterday. This morning, as you were flipping a few slices of roasted root, almost done cooking, a man from the tribe walked over and pointed toward the stream. Then at you, then made a firm pushing gesture. You understood. They were assigning you something. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't an invitation like in the early days. This time it was more like a specific task with particular expectations. You nodded, grabbed your pouch, tucked a few roots inside, fastened your stone knife to your side, and followed the man behind the stream to a place you rarely visited. The path sloped more steeply, and the grass rose past your knees. You pushed through, brushing aside dew-wet branches until you reached a clearing scattered with sharp stones. There, two others were hauling long logs from the forest's edge. Each log was as thick as your arm and about as long as your reach. Not ordinary firewood. This was sturdy timber used for building frames or windbreaks. Heavy, not easy to carry. They pointed at the woodpile and an old, leaning wooden frame nearby. You'd been assigned to help rebuild it. You hesitated, not out of laziness, but because you'd never built anything this large here. Yet no one explained. No one gave step-by-step guidance. They just worked and expected you to follow. You started by lifting a few smaller beams and driving them into the ground the way they did. Digging with your hands, wedging stones around the base, not too heavy, but fast enough to strain your back and numb your hands. The others worked quickly, silently, steadily. You tried to keep pace, but for every one beam you fixed, they'd finished 3. You didn't complain. Just keep your head down and work. But when you braced one support beam at the wrong angle and the whole frame tilted awkwardly to one side, the older man in the group stopped. He didn't yell, but he came over, took it apart, and redid it right before you. No scolding, but it wasn't needed. The feeling that you were slowing down the group was clear enough. You moved on to a different section. Gathering stones, digging holes, tying cords, twisting knots. With every part you finished, you checked it yourself, careful not to repeat mistakes. By midday, the frame stood firmer. It's not perfect, but it's no longer lopsided. The older man nodded and gestured. It was done. Everyone sat on nearby rocks and took out their food. You unwrapped the roasted root you'd packed in the morning, ate slowly. No one spoke, but the air felt lighter than it had in the morning. Before leaving, the older man handed you a length of tightly twisted leather cord, the strongest kind they used for frames. He said nothing. I just handed it over. You understood it as a form of acceptance, not praise, but no rejection. You returned to the cave in the afternoon light. Your hands were sore, fingernails full of dirt, shoulders aching, but in your pouch was a new piece of cord, and in your mindless noise. That evening, you lit your fire early, ate early, and then sat warming your hands longer than usual. You weren't thinking about building frames anymore. You were thinking about the first time you'd been assigned something. At first, you were an outsider, eating the shared leftovers, sitting behind and doing support work. But today, someone called your name, give you a task, watched you, judged you, and clumsy as you were, you'd finished it. You lay down, animal hide pulled close, fire crackling steady. Maybe tomorrow they'll call for you again, and you'll nod without hesitation. Tonight isn't colder than the nights before, but no one sleeps well. You sensed something was off since the afternoon. The birds went quiet earlier than usual, the stream fell too still, and the wind shifted direction without warning. No tribe member said it aloud, but their eyes told the story. Everyone moved more slowly and held their spears and stone knives more tightly. The children were called back to the cave earlier than usual. By evening, you lit your fire. It burned strong, but still didn't feel warm enough. This cold wasn't from the wind. It came from waiting. A quiet tension stretched across the rocks in the dark. You pulled your spear closer and slipped a sharp stone into your pouch. Not because you thought you'd have to fight, but because when everyone starts being careful, so should you. As you were arranging your sleeping skins, you heard a sound. Not loud, just a soft, dry crack from the edge of the forest. You sat up, listened. Nothing. You lay down, but before the skins reached your shoulders this time, a growl, not far, not vague, clear, a deep, heavy growl that echoed through the rocks and touched your spine. Not a wolf, not an owl. This was bigger, a night predator. Maybe a leopard or a bear or something you hadn't faced before. You sat bolt upright. You weren't the only one who heard it. From far away, you caught the sharp pattern of tribe signals. 3 short whistles, 1 long. All the central fires were lit larger. No one screamed. No one ran. But you saw more shadows moving than usual. You didn't leave the cave, but you dragged a stone tighter against the entrance to block the wind, the firelight, and whatever was out there. The fire glowed brighter. You sat still, eyes fixed on the mouth of the cave. She came by, carrying nothing and saying nothing. I just stepped in and sat across the fire from you. You looked at her. She placed down her spear, then gently pushed a fur blanket toward your side. You sat beside each other, the fire flickering across both faces in silence. No words needed, but you knew. No one was going to sleep tonight. Outside, the growl came again. It's fainter this time. Maybe the beast turned away. Or was they circling? You didn't know, but both of you gripped your spear handles tighter. Time moved slowly, like water dripping. By midnight, there were no more sounds, only the soft crackling of the fire and the dry wind brushing the hanging skins near the cave mouth. You rested your head against the rock. I didn't sleep, but weren't as tense as before. She dozed lightly beside you, spear still in hand. You pulled the fur over her shoulders, then turned your eyes back to the dark. Nothing happened that night. No one was hurt. No one went missing. The creature passed. Maybe it was the smoke. Perhaps the fires were too bright. But the whole tribe stayed awake together. The next morning, everyone was quieter than usual. Not out of fear, just tired. You stoked the fire again, warmed the water, and shared the last roasted root with her. She smiled softly and accepted it. Her eyes were more shadowed than yesterday, but still bright. So were yours. No one asked, were you scared last night? Because everyone knew you were. But you stayed. And in times like this, staying is courage enough. After a sleepless night, you expect the next day to pass slowly, but it doesn't. By midday, everything changes with a single shout. Not a call for help, a cry of joy. For the first time, you hear someone in the tribe cheer like that, loud, clear, echoing. You rush out of the cave, holding half a roasted root, and run toward the sound. At least 5 people are standing around something significant in the clearing, where people usually gather, being dragged with thick rope. You push closer. It's a forest deer. Badly wounded, blood smeared down one flank, its hind leg dragging, but still alive, eyes open. 2 tribe members hold their heads. One readies a fire-blackened spear. They'll end it quickly. You don't interfere, but you don't look away. It happens swiftly. One hard thrust. The animal collapses. No screams, no long struggle. Just the final breath disappearing into the wind. No one celebrates, but no one looks sad. Food is survival. You work with the others all afternoon, skinning, breaking bones, carving meat. Everyone has a task. You're not the best, but you know your hands are helpful. Cleaning stone blades, stacking wood, preparing leaves to wrap meat portions. The best cuts are kept to roast. That evening, a large fire is built in the center of the clearing. The whole tribe gathers around like it's an unnamed ceremony. No one says feast, but it feels like one. You're handed a thick slice of meat, still strabbed with fat, placed on a hot stone near the fire. The smell rises, rich, smoky, soaking into your hair, skin, and clothes. You sit quietly, holding a stick and flipping the meat gently. Then take a bite when the outside chars for the first time in many days of roasted roots, forest berries, and dried mushrooms. You eat real meat. It's tender and sweet, with no seasoning except smoke and flame. But each strand seems to melt on your tongue. The fat clings to your lips. You wipe it with your sleeve and you don't care. Everyone eats together. No pushing, no fighting, no waste. One piece of meat, eaten from start to finish. She sits a few people away. She also chewed her share, eyes on the fire. At one point, your eyes meet. Neither of you speaks, but you both know. Today is rare. As the sun sets, people drift away from the fire, carrying leftovers to hang in their own spaces. Bones are carefully carved and skins are taken to dry. Nothing is wasted. You carry your share back to the cave, a strip of dried meat wrapped in leaves tied with cord. You hang it on the wall near your spear and pouch. Then you sit down, the taste still lingering on your tongue. The fire burns steadily. Your fingers feel greasy with fat. You don't wash them. You want the scent to stay longer. You lie back, eyes on the stone ceiling where the firelight flickers and dances. You think about the deer, about that midday cheer, about the big fire, about the bite of meat. Not too much, not too little. And you think, I'll remember this smell. Then you sleep, your stomach full for the first time, truly full. The fire is still burning when you open your eyes. The ashes are warm and the stones are still radiating heat. No footsteps, no voices, no children laughing. Just silence, strange and heavy. You sit up quickly, step outside. No one. The entire camp area, usually full of people tending fires, drying hides, striking stones, twisting cords, is empty. No chatter, whistling, or fresh smoke. You turn a full circle and call out. No one answers. You start walking quickly toward the open clearing where people often gather, also empty. The stone circle is still warm. The fire was put out not long ago. A trail of footprints leads toward the edge of the forest, all in the same direction. You crouch to examine them, many people walking fast, carrying heavy bags and long spears. This isn't a regular hunting trip. This is the whole group leaving. You return to the cave, grab your pouch, strap on your spear, and follow the trail. Past the stream, past low trees, past soft soil where you once laid traps. The footprints remain clear. They're walking fast, but not fleeing. Not running, but going somewhere with purpose. After about half an hour, you hear voices ahead. Not loud, just murmurs, whispers, footsteps. You push through tall grass, and then you see them. The entire tribe stands in a wide arc around a fallen tree. Someone is lying beneath it. An elder, the one who gave you the sharpening stone. His eyes are closed, their hands folded over his chest. The people nearest him are placing small objects beside him. A bit of twine, a sharp stone, a piece of fiber cloth. No one cries, no one speaks. You don't know when it happened, only that you came late. Quietly, you step closer, taking your place at the circle's edge. No pushing, no words. Someone approaches the body and wraps it in an extra animal hide. Two others dig a shallow hollow beneath the roots of the tree. When it's ready, they lower him gently, hands still on his chest, eyes closed. Then, one by one, people step forward to drop a small token. No farewell speech. But you understand each item is a memory. You didn't bring anything, but you untie the strap from your bag. The first cord you ever twisted and place it at the edge of the hollow. The woman who once taught you to make a cord stands nearby watching. She says nothing, just nods softly. The earth is filled back in. There's no raised mound, just a slight rise covered with leaves. Everyone stands still for a long moment, then slowly they turn to leave. No hurry, no sighs, no complaints. Death in this time isn't strange, but it is remembered. You walk back with the others. No one speaks, but everyone walks in step, shoulders slightly low, as if each person carries something heavy, something unnamed. Back at the caves, everyone returns to their own space. No shared meal, no mention of the morning. But you know everyone is remembering. You are too. That night you light your fire early, hang your pouch back up, your spear, then sit silently beside the glowing coals. The cord you made is gone. But in your mind, the image of the older man, calloused hands, eyes without anger, his quiet patience as he corrected your every movement, is clear. You don't know when your own time will come, but you know that if someone ever places a cord into your hands, you'll understand what they mean. And nothing more needs to be said. The rain began before dawn, no thunder, no gusts of wind. A steady drizzle tapped the stone roof, and the dry leaves hung near the cave entrance. Drop by drop, it landed on the earth, flowed into cracks in the rocks, and created a rhythmic sound like someone gently drumming a lullaby. You opened your eyes, still wrapped in animal hide. Outside, the fire had gone out, not because you forgot, but because of the dampness all night. You reached a hand out past the cave's edge. The rain was cold, but not biting. Your hands stayed dry thanks to the sheltering rock above. And for the first time, you didn't rush to relight the fire. You just lay there listening to the rainfall. In the early days, the rain bothered you because it was wet, because it was cold, because it meant worrying about drying wood, clothes, and hair. But today, you felt calm. The rain made the earth cleaner. It filled the stream. It cleared out the smell of old smoke. You sat up, folded the hide, and slowly stepped toward the cave entrance. No one was going anywhere today. The whole tribe had retreated to the stone shelters, each person tending to their own space. No hunting, no drying, no gatherings. You heard soft laughter from the neighboring cave where some children played in puddles. Then a faint cough from an older woman. Then silence. You picked up your water pouch, sat down, and poured a little into a small stone bowl, sipping slowly. Then I pulled out a piece of dried meat left from the deer feast, took a small bite, and chewed slowly. The smoky flavor still lingered, even though it was cold. There was nothing to do, no need to prepare anything. The rain was a perfectly good reason to do nothing. You remembered a gesture someone in the tribe had made once. When it rains, it's time to rest. You took your sharpening stone and began to smooth out your spear handle, not because it was needed, to keep your hands busy. Then you tightened the strap on your pouch where it had begun to fray. Afterward, you pulled out some bark and tried twisting a new cord. Thinner this time, fine as a strand of hair. While you were bent over your work, soft footsteps approached. It was her. She said nothing. I just stepped in, hair slightly damp, arms carrying a bundle of green leaves. She sat beside the cold ashes, pulled out some dry bark, and struck her firestone. You reached over to shield the spark from the breeze. A flicker, a wisp of smoke, then fire again. You warmed your hands together. She placed her leaves behind the fire to dry. You nudged a few stones closer to the flame for extra warmth. No words were spoken, but every movement flowed together like you had done this many times before. After a while, she reached into her pouch and took out 2 red wild berries, placing one beside you. There is no need to gesture. You picked it up, bit gently. A soft tang, just sweet enough. You looked outside. The rain still fell steadily. Each drop splashed on the ground, forming tiny circles before vanishing. Not harsh, not hurried, like this tribe, quiet but enduring. She picked up the cord you'd been twisting, your latest attempt, and looped it gently around her wrist. Not tight, just once around. Then she took it off. I placed it back beside you. You smiled. They didn't speak. She stood up, nodded, and stepped out of the cave, heading toward the far side of the cliff. You stayed a while longer, still holding the cord that had circled her wrist. The earth was damp, the fire crackled softly, and the air smelled of wet leaves. You lay back down and pulled the hide to your chin, eyes resting on the stone ceiling. Today was a rainy day, but not cold, not lonely, and needing nothing more. This morning, the rain had stopped. It had ended sometime in the night. The ground was still damp. Pebbles glistened with leftover droplets. The trees looked greener, the grass softer, and the air smelled clean. You woke up earlier than usual, partly because of the bird song right outside the cave, partly because you just felt good. Nothing ached. You weren't cold, you weren't hungry, you weren't uneasy. You started the fire quickly, boiled some water, and laid out a few items to dry from the day before. While you were shaving a tree branch into a knife handle, an older man passed by and gestured for you to follow him. You nodded, grabbed your spear, slung your pouch over your shoulder, and followed. He led you to the forest's edge, to a mossy boulder. There were already 3 others there. One of them a young man around your age, hunched over and clutching a bleeding arm. You stepped closer. The cut was deep, a long gash down his forearm, blood dried in streaks, but the skin around it was swollen and red. You didn't know what had happened, but it looked like a mishap with carving wood or splitting stone. His face was pale. His eyes stared into nothing. The older man sat beside him, pulling out a pouch of dry leaves, black powder, and a little water collected from tree leaves. He began washing the wound. You were signaled to hold the young man steady. You did. Your hand gripped his shoulder. You could feel the tension in his muscles, the quick breathing, and the unwilling eyes that refused to look down. You didn't say anything. He squeezed his shoulder slightly as if to say, "It's okay." When the herbs and powder were applied, the wound calmed. His breathing slowed, and then for the first time he glanced at you. No words, but in that one look was the clearest thank you you'd ever seen. The older man tied up the wound with a strip of soft hide. When he was done, he stood up and gestured for you to stay with the boy while he fetched more herbs. You sat down beside him. Neither of you spoke. A few minutes passed. Then the boy extended his right hand, the uninjured one, and turned it palm up. There was a small faded scar. He pointed at it, then mimed something. Climbing a tree as a child and falling. You understood, and without thinking, you pulled up your pant leg, revealing the thin scar from when you slipped fetching water on your first week here. It stretched across your knee. You pointed to it and looked at him. Both of you laughed softly, briefly. But it was the first laugh of the day. You thought about scars, faint marks on the skin, and how everyone here has them. No one hides them. No one is ashamed in this world. If you have a scar, it means you survived. Each one is a story, a lesson, a moment you almost didn't make it, but did. You were invited to the camp center to help prepare Firestone that afternoon. Everyone was gathering dry straw and bark and sharing supplies with those whose belongings were soaked by the long rains. You carved the stones, sharpened edges, and tested the sparks. The task wasn't challenging, but it required focus. Your hands earned a few scrapes from the repetition, but you didn't mind. By nightfall, you returned to the cave. The fire you'd built earlier was still glowing gently. You added more wood, gave it a soft breath, and sat beside it. You removed your shirt and checked your knee. The scar was fully healed now, no more redness, no more sting, but you remembered clearly what it had felt like when it tore open. The chill, the sting, the panic. She came by while you were looking at it. She sat down and glanced at the scar. I didn't touch it. Just give a slight nod, then place a smooth round stone beside you, the kind used to soothe bruises or hold warmth by the fire. You picked it up, said nothing. Just hold it in your palm, firm and warm. Then place it gently on your thigh next to the old scar. You don't know how many more scars are waiting ahead. But if they come, you now know you'll make it through. And when they heal, they'll whisper that you once hurt, feared, and fell, but didn't quit. This morning, as the sun finally broke through after days of damp weather, someone in the tribe pointed at you, then pointed toward the forest edge, where a stretch of berry bushes grew thick and wild. You understood right away. It was your turn to go foraging, not hunting, not dangerous. But it's not as easy as you'd imagined either. You slung on a leather pouch, grabbed your spear, and tucked a few lengths of twisted cord into your belt for tying things. Your guide was a young woman a few years older than you, quiet, severe, and swift on her feet. The two of you passed through a low forest, stepping over small streams. Berries grew scattered around, some red, some black, others a purplish green. She signaled, "Only pick the soft ones, round and even in color without blemishes. The others bitter, waxy, or worse." You began to pick, dropping one berry at a time into your pouch. The sun rose slowly, slicing through the leaves. Birds called through the trees. The air was cool, the soil damp beneath your feet, but pleasant. After a while, she veered off to check a distant patch. She gestured, "Wait here." You nodded and kept picking. At first, you were careful, but then you spotted another patch of bushes not far off. You thought, "I'll just grab a few and come right back." So you stepped over. That bush sat beside a large tree trunk. You crouched, picked a few berries, and added them to your pouch. Then I spotted another patch slightly farther and another one beyond that. You kept going deeper and deeper without realizing it until you looked up and I didn't know where you were. No sign of the original bush, no familiar tree, no trail. You turned in a circle. Every tree looked the same, leaves scattered everywhere, birds still chirping. The wind is still blowing, but no more footsteps, no more voices. You weren't panicking, but your heart was beating faster. You tried walking back the way you came, but after a few steps, you weren't sure if that was the way. No footprints, no landmarks. You stopped. I took a deep breath, then remembered what you'd seen the others do. Stand still. Listen. You sat on a rock, set down the berry pouch, and closed your eyes. The wind blew from the west. You tried to sense everything around you. A faint rustle, just leaves. Not human. Then another sound. Click. Like two stones tapping. You opened your eyes, listened closely. A whistling signal. You jumped to your feet and replied 3 short whistles like you'd heard others use before. Moments later, there was a reply. Then footsteps. And then she appeared, breathing slightly more complicated than usual, but with calm eyes. No scolding, no questions about why you wandered off. She just glanced at your berry pouch and nodded. You understood. Next time, don't go off alone. On the way back, neither of you said a word, but every step felt more deliberate, more certain. Back at the cave, you emptied the berries and began washing them. A few were bruised, a few not quite ripe, but most were good. You set aside some to dry. The rest would be used to make drinks. That evening, as you were tending the fire, she passed by and placed something in your pouch. A length of twisted leather cord stronger than the ones you usually carried. Then walked away. No words, but a clear message. Next time, tie a trail. You held the cord in your hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. Your first time berry foraging had taught you more than just how to spot the ripe ones. You'd learned how to listen, how to pause, how to wait, and that sometimes to avoid getting lost. All you need is a tether, even a simple one like a cord. Today, nothing significant happened. No hunting, no scaffold building, no injuries, no beasts growling in the dark. Everyone in the tribe calmly did their work, some drying roots, some scraping hides, others hanging rope to dry. It was a day so ordinary. It felt almost empty. And for the first time since arriving here, you weren't given any task. You woke up late, well after the sun had risen. No one called for you. No one pointed or signaled. You lit a small fire and ate your breakfast of leftover dried meat and cool stream water. Then I sat for a long while, unsure what to do next. You tried splitting some wood, but stopped after 3 swings. You tried twisting the cord, but the strands turned uneven. You thought about walking to the stream, but the air was heavy and damp, and your heart wasn't in it. You felt uneasy, used to always being busy. But then you looked around. A young boy was doodling on a stone with a stick. An older woman was tying plant fibers into small bundles. Someone was lying on a sun-warmed rock, arms behind their head, eyes closed. No one was in a rush. No one seemed pressed to be anywhere at all. And you realized maybe today was a day for doing nothing. So you walked toward the end of the cliff, the place where you once watched the birds. A narrow ledge jutted out overlooking a quiet valley below. Tall grass, scattered shrubs, and in the distance, low, soft hills faded by haze. You sat. No tools, no spear, no pouch, just your hands, your fur tunic, and yourself. The sky was mostly cloudy. A gentle breeze brushed your hair from the nape of your neck. You sat cross-legged, gazing into the distance. I'm not thinking of anything in particular. But your mind didn't feel heavy. You noticed how the Earth's color changed with the sunlight's angle. The bright green grass at noon now looked golden, almost burnt. Shadows stretched long. A large bird glided past, silent, wings spread. You didn't know how long you sat there. When you finally stood up, your legs tingled slightly with pins and needles, but you didn't mind. In fact, your chest felt lighter. On the way back to your cave, you passed the central clearing. She was there tying bundles of roots, stacking them on a rack. As you walked by, she glanced up and looked you over. No pouch, no tools, and gave a soft, squinting smile. You lifted your hands in a small gesture. Nothing today. She nodded, not surprised, not judging. You reached your cave just as the last light faded. The fire lit quickly. You sat close to the stone wall, cracked open a few roots, and roasted them lightly. As the flames began to glow steady, you leaned back, wrapped yourself in fur, and closed your eyes. You weren't tired, but you didn't want to think anymore either. And before sleep took you, you thought back over the day. Not because anything dramatic had happened, but because it was the first time. You let yourself be still, not working, not striving, not learning anything new, just existing. And in the Stone Age, sometimes that's the hardest thing of all. Last night you slept deeper than usual, not out of exhaustion, just because your body had grown used to the rhythm. Work, eat, fire, sleep. But when you opened your eyes this morning, something felt off. The wind. Not the usual breeze. This one carried a strange scent. Not the dampness of morning dew. Not the smoky remnants of last night's fire, but something burnt, bitter, slightly suffocating. You sat up, stepped outside the cave, and scanned the area. Nothing looked different. The sky was clear. The trees stood still. No sign of strong wind. But the strange scent lingered, curling through the air like something had been scorched nearby. You followed the narrow path toward the tribe's central clearing, and on the way you noticed something else. Footprints, not the old ones, not familiar ones. These were fresh, scattered, uneven, some pressed deep into the soil like someone had been carrying weight. You couldn't tell how many people, but one thing was sure, they weren't from anyone you knew. You slowed your pace, listened carefully. No voices, no movement, only quiet. When you reached the clearing, a few people had already gathered. Their faces were serious. One person pointed toward a distant line of bushes where dark ash stained the ground and the soil looked torn. You approached. There it was, the remains of a campfire, but not one of yours. The stones were placed haphazardly. The bark used for kindling was unfamiliar, and in the ashes, bones, small fragments mixed with the charred remains of a torn pouch. Inside, a few strands of twisted cord, a worn-down sharpening stone, and a smooth piece of wood carved carefully with steady hands. You glanced at the person beside you. They gave a subtle nod, then whispered, "Wanderers." You'd heard of them, people without permanent tribes, always moving, drifting between forests. Some traveled in pairs, some alone. Not all were dangerous, but none could be fully trusted. The tribe didn't discuss it. They acted. They stamped out the ashes, leveled the ground, buried the bones. I burned the rest. No one said why, but you understood. Here, any unknown trace near the caves is a risk no one wants to leave behind. You were sent with a small group to scout further. 3 people, each with a spear, a water pouch, and a few flat marking stones. You followed quietly, past a patch of low trees, down into a narrow ravine. There, more footprints climbing up the ridge. Not deep, but recent. Whoever had camped nearby had left just a few hours ago. There are no signs of violence, no voices, only forest. The group stood still for a moment, then turned back. No chase, no calls, just silence. You didn't ask why. Here, silence is sometimes the safest thing you can offer. By late afternoon, everyone had returned to their caves. You hung your spear, checked your pouch, then lit the fire. The wind had calmed, but that burnt smell lingered. Not in the air, but in memory. She came by while you were adjusting the firewood. I didn't sit. They didn't speak. I just handed you a small bundle of dried leaves, the fragrant kind used to mask strange odors. You accepted it with a nod. She held your gaze a moment, then walked away. You placed the bundle near the flames. The sharp herbal scent curled upward, overtaking the last traces of that unfamiliar smoke. You sat there, holding your old flintstone, gently tapping it against your knee, not anxious, just alert. Tonight you won't sleep deeply. Not out of fear, but because now you understand. Not everyone who walks these woods is like you. After a day when no one mentioned the wanderers again, the fires were lit earlier than usual. Every cave glowed red. The scent of dried herbs drifted through the air. A soft veil as if shielding the tribe from unspoken things. You lay still in your cave, not quite asleep, not fully awake, eyes fixed on the flickering firelight dancing across the stone walls. Everything looked the same, your spear beside you, your pouch hanging from the rock, the coil of rope above your head. But inside, something felt off balance. You didn't feel afraid, but safety didn't feel complete either. You turned toward the wall, pulling the hide tighter over your shoulders. The fire had grown quieter, no longer crackling, just breathing soft warmth. The wind whispered at the cave's mouth, making the light on the ceiling tremble like it too was trying to sleep. You drifted off, not knowing when, and you dreamed. In the dream, you stood in a clearing, an open forest filled with light. But it wasn't sunlight or firelight, just light. The ground beneath your feet felt neither wet nor dry. You stood alone. Then, one by one, figures began to appear in the distance, faces unclear, voices absent, but somehow familiar. The elder who once treated your leg with crushed leaves. The boy with the scar, the one you helped held steady. The quiet girl who sat beside you that stormy night, Anna yourself. Not now, but how you once were, clumsy hands gripping a spear. Shoulders tense, eyes always pointed down. They all stood there still, unmoving. Only you were walking, one slow step at a time, over rocks, over dry leaves, over embers. But nothing burned, nothing hurt. As you neared, they turned all at once, not rushed, not fleeing, just leaving. You called out. No one paused. You ran, but each step stretched the distance between you until they vanished into the trees. You stopped alone again. At your feet, a circle of ash. You knelt inside it. The sharpening stone you'd been given that first week split in half. You reached down and picked up the larger piece and woke up. The fire was nearly out. The sky is still dark, but outside you heard soft footsteps on the dirt. Not hurried, not secretive, familiar. You rose and stepped to the mouth of the cave. It was her, standing a few steps away, water pouch in her arms, eyes resting on the edge of the trees. You said nothing. She turned slightly, tilting her head as if to say, "You two?" You sat on the flat rock just outside. She joined you, two people side by side, no words, only night. The fading glow of dying coals and the hush of leaves in the wind. You opened your pouch, pulled out the sharpening stone. Still whole, not broken. You squeezed it gently. She reached for it, studied it briefly in the dim light, then placed it back into your hand. You both understood. No two dreams are ever the same, but the feeling after waking that everyone recognizes. You didn't sleep again that night. I just sat there beside someone looking out toward the forest. No talking, no need. Because tonight you knew with quiet certainty. You were no longer a stranger here. That morning you didn't wake in a rush. No one called, no unfamiliar footprints, no urgent tasks, only warm light filtered through the mouth of the cave, birds calling gently to one another, and the dry scent of stone and earth after a calm night. As always, you sat up, rolled your hide neatly, folded your small pouches, and hung your spear and coiled rope on the stone hook. Everything was in its place now. You no longer fumbled for each item like you did in those first days. You rekindled the fire. Your hands knew precisely how to strike stone, a gentle tap, just the right angle, and sparks on the first try. You dried your tinder, added wood, and warmed the heat stone beside the flame like it was second nature. Someone from the tribe passed by, the elder who once nodded at your fire rack. He looked at you silently, lifted his fist, and pressed it to his chest. A simple gesture, but in this world it meant well done. You nodded, smiled, and returned to your quiet tasks, sharpening the tip of your spear, tightening your pouch straps, airing out the last bundle of fragrant rope. That afternoon, you wandered the familiar forest paths, not to gather, not to hunt, to look back. The old tree stump where you set your first snare, the flat rock where you once nursed a swollen leg, the clearing where you added your first stick to the communal fire. They were all still there. But you weren't the same. You were no longer clumsy, no longer asking yourself, "What am I doing here?" You knew you were living. As dusk fell, you returned to your cave and sat by the fire. She came by, said nothing, and sat beside you. After a while, she reached into her pouch and pulled out a smooth stone, carved with a small mark. The mark your tribe used to say, "One of us." She placed it in your palm, then stood and walked away. You held it tightly. No wars came, none were needed. You had stayed, you had learned, you had grown, you had survived, and more than anything, you had been accepted. And so your journey through the Stone Age comes to a quiet close. From a stranger fumbling with firewood to someone who could tend a flame, tie rope, set a trap, and sit in stillness without feeling alone. You've learned how to survive through strength, observation, patience, and silent kindness. The Stone Age had no phones, no mattresses, and no conveniences. But it had people. It had nods of recognition. It had a firelight in the dark. It had cords, scars, and cool stones passed from hand to hand, like quiet reminders that you were truly alive. Thank you for spending 30 nights with me on this journey. I hope this story helped you feel the quiet beauty of a time long forgotten, yet still worth remembering. Gently, if you've enjoyed this series, don't forget to tap like to let the algorithm know you'd like to hear more, and subscribe to the channel so I have a reason to keep fighting these little fires. Thank you for sleeping with history. Wishing you a peaceful night. Goodbye for now, and see you on the next adventure.